On a quiet Tuesday morning, a phone lowers slowly. Its owner aims to capture what seems like an ordinary scene at a small-town diner. But then you see him, a black man, wearing a well-worn Army veteran cap, standing at the counter with a polite smile, waiting to be served. The waiter comes up, glances down, and mutters, "Go back to where you came from." The phone pans up just in time to show the veteran's stunned face, mouth opening in shock. He looks around, confused. The other patrons freeze. A murmur ripples through the cafe. That sentence, "Go back to where you came from," lands like a punch. And the video goes viral. Within hours, the world sees a decorated soldier, a man who served his country, being treated like an unwelcome stranger on his own soil. How did we get here? Tonight, we dive into Marcus Williams's story, an Army sergeant, Purple Heart recipient, and wounded warrior who, upon returning home, was told to leave. This is more than an isolated incident. It's a stark reflection of the social injustice that continues to plague our nation. From soldier to civilian, Marcus Williams enlisted in the Army straight out of high school. He was 19 when he first gripped a rifle, leaving behind the dusty streets of Birmingham, Alabama, with dreams of serving something greater than himself. Once on the ground, he proved himself quickly. Discipline, unwavering loyalty, and a knack for leading his squad earned him a promotion to staff sergeant by age 23. In his unit, they called him Anchor, because no matter how fierce the firefight, Marcus remained calm, pointing his men towards safety. He did 2 tours in Iraq, then deployed to Afghanistan, where a mortar blast changed everything. The explosion ripped through the barracks, wounding Marcus's right leg and exposing him to shrapnel near his heart. The Purple Heart came weeks later. He clutched that medal with tears in his eyes, proud and broken at the same time. After 9 months of rehabilitation, trenches of pain, endless physical therapy, he walked with a cane but swore he would stand tall again. By the time he was honorably discharged, Marcus thought he'd be greeted with pride, gratitude, and a sense of belonging. He was wrong. Disrespect caught on camera. It was a Friday afternoon in early May. Marcus drove to that small-town diner, one he'd visited with his parents as a kid. He remembered the laughter, the smell of hot coffee, the friendly banter between neighbors. He wore his veteran cap that day, not as a plea for attention, but out of habit, a quiet tribute to the sacrifices he'd made. The diner's neon sign flickered as he pushed open the door. He nodded to the booth in the back, but something felt off. Half the tables sat empty, and the young waiter hovered near the register, phone in hand. Marcus stepped up to the counter and said, "Morning. I'll have the country breakfast and black coffee, please." The waiter's eyes flicked to Marcus's cap, then to his worn combat boots. For a moment, silence. Then the waiter leaned in, voice low. "We don't serve your kind here. Go back where you came from." Marcus froze. He blinked twice, as if expecting a hidden camera joke. But the diner's bell chimed behind him as a few other patrons glanced. Over, jaws dropping, Marcus's voice caught in his throat. He reached out to touch the rim of his cap, his Purple Heart ribbon stitching visible to anyone who cared to look. Another patron, a middle-aged woman, rose from her seat and shouted, "That's a war hero you're talking to." The waiter rolled his eyes and turned away, pretending to clear a table. Marcus swallowed hard, hurt and fury twisting inside him like a vice. He grabbed his phone and, with shaky hands, began recording. "Hey, I served this country for 8 years, he said, voice thick. "I risked my life in places you can't even imagine. Who do you think you are?" The phone camera captured the waiter's sneer before he stormed to the kitchen. Marcus walked out, staring at his reflection in the glass door, eyes reddened, shoulders trembling. That video, posted online by a bystander, exploded overnight. Millions of views, dozen of outraged comments, news outlets calling it racist. And yet, to some, it was proof that a black veteran was still less than human to many Americans. Marcus's military service. Let's rewind. Fall of 2011. Marcus steps off the plane in Baghdad, the desert sun searing his fatigues. Trucks kick up red dust around him, and the air smells like oil and sweat. He's 19, wide-eyed, chest tight. He can't hear the mortar shells over the crackle of his own heartbeat. Day after day, Marcus leads patrols down narrow alleyways, watching for insurgents, listening for the faintest hum of an RPG. He recalls clearing buildings by hand, saving children trapped under rubble. "Stay low," he told his squad. voice firm despite pounding adrenaline. One minute they sprinted toward cover, the next, a mortar slammed into their base camp. The world tilted as if someone took the floor out from under him. He remembers the blast's echo, shrapnel ripping into his leg, heat searing his arm. He lost consciousness on the ground, dying 1,000 times in those few seconds. Weeks later, he woke in a sterile hospital bed, IVs hooked into both arms, tubes down his throat. His sergeant stood by his side, tears in his eyes. "You pulled 3 men out of that rubble, Marcus. You're alive because of you." He couldn't stand. He couldn't walk. But he vowed, right then, that if he survived, he would keep fighting, fight to walk again, fight to be counted, fight to be heard. 9 months later, he walked into the welcome home ceremony on 2 legs and a limp. The applause was thunderous. Local news covered his story, the fallen soldier who refused to stay down. For those 9 months, Marcus was a star, a symbol that sacrifice mattered. He believed it. Until this diner. By sunrise the next day, hashtags trending. Hashtag respect our veterans, hashtag justice for Marcus. Some called out the diner by name. Local radio stations played the clip on loop, hosts decrying the injustice. Social media flared. Friends from boot camp, fellow veterans, Black Lives Matter organizers, all rallied behind Marcus. Yet, amid the solidarity, bitter voices spoke. Why did he record it? He should have kept his cool. He's stirring up trouble. Maybe he wasn't the nicest guy. Marcus read one comment that stung more than the waiter's words. He's just an attention seeker. He felt a fresh wave of betrayal, this time, from his own people who dismissed his pain because he dared to stand up. That afternoon, he stepped onto the patch of grass across the street from the diner. Reporters crowded him. They asked, "Marcus, do you regret recording?" He closed his eyes and exhaled, annoyance flickering in his expression. Recording it didn't create the hate. It only showed what was already there. I serve my country. I earned respect. Instead, I get told to go back where I came from. A local pastor, Reverend James Carter, stood beside him, hand on his shoulder. "This goes deeper than one waiter's insult," the pastor said. "It speaks to a wound in our society, one where we honor soldiers on Veterans Day, but turn a blind eye when they bleed quietly." Meanwhile, inside the diner, a handful of customers confronted the owner. One man slammed his fist on the table. "You lost business because you hired a bigot." The owner, stiff-backed and pale, mumbled he was having a bad day. "It's just one incident." Outside, the line of protesters stretched down Main Street, signs reading "Veterans deserve respect" and "Black Lives Matter." Some posters displayed Marcus's photo in uniform, Purple Heart gleaming. Children held hands, chanting, "Black, white, we all unite." Yet behind the cheers and chants, Marcus felt uneasy. The incident was viral, headlines worldwide, but for him, the wound was still fresh. He needed more than hashtags. He needed answers. Over the following week, Marcus couldn't sleep. He replayed the diner's scene in his mind on loop. Every time he closed his eyes, he felt the weight of the waiter's words crushing his spirit. In therapy sessions at the VA, he confessed, "I fought for this country. I lost brothers in battle. I thought I belonged here, until that moment." His counselor, Staff Sergeant, Ret. Elaine Rodriguez, listened intently. She leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. "Racism doesn't care about medals, Marcus. It's a poison that seeps into every corner of our society, even places meant to be safe, like a diner. You're not alone in feeling betrayed." Marcus wiped his eyes. "But I keep thinking, if I was white, would he have dared speak to me that way?" Rodriguez exhaled. "That's the question, isn't it? We live with systemic bias that devalues Black lives. A veteran cap won't shield you from that." Marcus nodded slowly, anger flickering behind his gaze. In the days that followed, he faced a barrage of interviews, local TV, national networks, podcasts. Each time he repeated the story, "I stepped in, said my order," and his lips curled. He spat those words at me. But every interview opened old wounds. He'd see the same puzzled expressions, hear the same veiled judgment. "Are you sure you didn't provoke him? Maybe you escalated it." Marcus began questioning himself. He took to walking at dawn, driving past old army barracks on the outskirts of the city. He'd close his eyes and hear mortar shells again, remember the taste of dust on his tongue. He realized that, on the battlefield, he knew exactly who the enemy was. Here, the enemy was invisible, a centuries-old prejudice, passed on like an heirloom. And now that enemy had snuck back into his life, disguised as indifference and excuses. As Marcus struggled to process, his community sprang into action. Reverend Carter organized a town hall meeting at St. Paul's Church. Banner over the entrance read, "Stand with our veteran." Hundreds of residents filled the pews, black, white, brown, old, and young, sitting shoulder to shoulder. The pastor stepped to the lectern. "We are here because our country has failed one of its own. A man who gave his blood, sweat, and tears for freedom was stripped of dignity in that diner. Tonight, we demand better." First, local business owners pledged support. Mrs. Thompson, who ran the bakery next door, announced, "For every veteran who comes in during the next month, the first loaf of bread is on me. We see you. We honor you." Then, a group of high school students recited a poem about unity, culminating in the line, "If justice is blind, then we must lend it vision." Marcus watched from the back, heart swelling and choking at once. But not everyone was on his side. At least 2 members of the town council voted against condemning the diner, arguing free speech. He can't fire someone for something they said outside of work, they debated. Marcus clenched his fists, remembering the waiter's smirk as he walked away. Reverend Carter gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "Keep the faith, Marcus. It's a fight bigger than this diner." Over the next days, petitions circulated online, gathering tens of thousands of signatures demanding the diner issue a public apology and that the local council pass an anti-discrimination ordinance. Veteran service organizations stepped forward. The VFW chapter offered legal assistance, and the American Legion posted Marcus's story on their website under Protect Our Heroes. Volunteers printed T-shirts reading, "Respect our warriors." Some sold, some handed out for free outside the diner each morning. Slowly, the county sheriff's office launched an investigation into possible hate crime charges. All the while, Marcus wanted to retreat, to go back to quiet life, away from cameras and angry debates. But every time he considered giving up, someone reached out. The young waitress at the diner who refused to serve the waiter another plate of eggs. The gas station attendant who saluted Marcus whenever he filled his tank. The elderly neighbor who left food on his porch with a note. "Thank you for your service." They told him, "Your dignity is worth fighting for." And so, Marcus realized this was bigger than him. 2 weeks later, the district attorney called. "Marcus, we believe there's sufficient evidence to pursue a hate crime violation." The diner's owner received an official notice to appear in court. News cameras parked outside the building daily, capturing every tense exchange between lawyers. The owner, once unrepentant, now issued a lackluster apology. "I'm sorry if anyone was offended." He refused to fire the waiter, insisting the words were taken out of context. The courtroom scene unfolded in dramatic fashion. The DA outlined, "Your employee targeted Mr. Williams with a racial slur, knowing he was a veteran. This violates Section 247(b) of the Criminal Code." The owner's attorney argued free speech. He said it out of frustration, not with malicious intent. "We asked the court to dismiss any hate crime charges." Marcus sat at the front row, flanked by his attorney, a stern woman with piercing eyes, and a local civil rights lawyer dispatched by the NAACP. His hands clenched a folder of letters from fellow veterans, community leaders, even strangers across the country offering support. He remembered the battlefields where he clung to a rifle, thinking he could only die once. But here, in a wooden-paneled courtroom, he felt the weight of a societal gun pointed at him again. Media outlets turned every statement into a headline: "Veteran versus Diner. A town divided. Hate crime or free speech? Jury decides." Reports showed simmering tension, protests outside the diner, counter-protests defending free speech. Late-night talk show hosts discussed it as if it were a national referendum on racism and patriotism. Late one evening, Marcus's phone pinged, a direct message from a famous NBA player, offering to fly him to Los Angeles for a panel on veterans and racial justice. Another text arrived from a Hollywood director proposing a documentary. Suddenly, Marcus was more than his local story. He was a symbol, a banner for multiple causes. But as his face appeared on TV screens, he felt unease. Was his story being used to score points? Was he still Marcus Williams, or just a talking head? The day of the hearing arrived. The jury filed in. Witnesses testified. One patron said they heard the waiter say, "Go back to where you came from," before Marcus even spoke. The waiter took the stand, eyes darting, voice low. I was having a bad day. He looked like trouble, so I reacted. The DA's cross-examination drilled in. "Did you know Mr. Williams served in the military?" The waiter hesitated and then shook his head. I had no clue. The DA leaned forward. "So you insulted a man who saved lives without even recognizing his sacrifice?" The waiter's mouth opened, but no answer came. The jury deliberated for hours. In the hallway, Marcus's attorney whispered, "Whether the verdict is guilty or not, you've already won more than most get, awareness. But let's hope for justice in this courtroom." The jury returned. The judge banged his gavel. "We find the defendant guilty of a misdemeanor hate crime." The courtroom erupted, some cheering, some stunned silence. The owner, face pale, sank into his seat. The waiter's shoulders dropped. Tears welled in his eyes. Marcus felt a wave of relief, yet underneath it lay a hollow ache. He'd won, but what had that victory cost him? As he exited the courthouse, cameras flashed like midday sun. Reporters shouted, "Marcus, how do you feel?" He took a deep breath and spoke into a dozen microphones. "I feel vindicated. For once, a man who fought for his country got some justice. But this isn't just about me. It's about every black brother or sister who has been told they don't belong. This is a step, not the finish line." Over the next days, Marcus faced a pivotal choice: succumb to the spotlight or use it to build change. He received offers, reality. TV producers wanted him to star in a docuseries. Talk show hosts invited him for interviews. Part of him craved anonymity, to slip into quiet nights without cameras. But another part, scarred, resilient, wanted to speak for those who couldn't. So he chose to stand. He announced plans for a nonprofit to support veterans of color, providing legal aid, counseling, and job training. He partnered with local churches and veteran organizations, turning outrage into action. The diner, meanwhile, quietly changed hands. A new owner reopened the doors, this time posting a framed letter from Marcus. "My country forgave me for my wounds. Let us learn to forgive one another." The former waiter, court-ordered into sensitivity training, reached out to apologize in writing. "I was wrong, and I want to learn." Marcus wrote back, "Healing starts when we acknowledge our mistakes." He never visited that diner again, but he left behind a sign above the counter. "All are welcome." A new path forward. Today, 9 months after the incident, Marcus stands on a small stage at the city's annual Veterans Day ceremony. He's taller, his uniform still a little snug around the shoulders. He's lost some weight, but gained purpose. Behind him, banners read "Veterans United" and "Equality for All." He reads from a paper. "When I returned home, I expected honor. Instead, I was told to go away. But through this trial, I found my voice. I realized that silence only protects injustice. Today, I stand not just as a black veteran, but as a citizen demanding respect for every person who's worn the uniform, regardless of color." The crowd erupts in applause. A young black soldier in the front row salutes him, tears streaming. On the dais, Governor Elaine Morris promises new state legislation ensuring protected access for all veterans in public spaces. Marcus steps down, embraced by Reverend Carter, his mom, and half a dozen comrades. Outside, a group of children holds homemade signs. "Thank you, Sergeant Williams and justice served." He kneels to take their hands. One little girl, eyes bright, says, "Thank you for fighting for us." Marcus smiles, a tear slipping down his cheek. "I fight for everyone," he tells her, voice steady. That afternoon, he visits a local high school to speak to students. He tells them, "You might lose a battle, but you can never lose your dignity. When the world tells you don't belong, prove them wrong by standing tall, even when it hurts." And as he steps onto the stage, microphone in hand, he knows his mission has just begun. The camera pans out, Montgomery's skyline in the late afternoon glow. We see Marcus, not as a victim, but as a symbol of resilience and change. Because in a country still wrestling with its conscience, a black veteran's fight for respect isn't over until every voice is heard.